So, my previous post a while ago had some spooky things going on in our home. We've never had much of a reaction with the cats, but that's starting to change. Now my cats have always been super chill except for the occasion growl at strangers at the door. Very rarely for them to do that. Like if they hear someone at the door, they'll growl. It's cute, but it hasn't happened in a long while. But in the last week, we've had 2 incidents with unexplained hissing. My Ara, she's the only female cat of 4, was part of the first incident. It was nighttime. Pretty late. Husband was sleeping next to me. I'm kind of a night owl. Laugh out loud. So now her usual spot is next to our bed on the swivel chair that's from the desk. I can reach over and pet her from where I'm sleeping. So I look over and she is standing up straight, just staring at our door that's open to the hallway. I ask her what she's staring at, and she fucking growls. Now I'm like, what the fuck? And she keeps staring and growling at as I pet her. There's nothing there, by the way. Nobody outside, no other cats. I look, go in the hallway, nothing. She isn't old either. She's only about 6 to 7 in cat years, so no senile cat. She does eventually calm down, but it was pretty spooky. Now remember, I said my stairs are kind of haunted. Well, that's where the second incident happened. That was today. My husband saw this one. He said our cat, Son, Tyron, ran from the landing up the stairs, turned around, and hissed at the empty space. This cat is the chillest. Like my toddler sometimes pulls his tail. I've been very diligent about them being gentle with my cats. And he'll just meow at them and then lay back down and usually rub against them. He's just that cool of a cat. He doesn't hiss. I don't think in the 6 to 7 years I've had him he has ever hissed except when I take him to the vet. He loathes the vet. So now I'm wondering if this is a bad entity that had stopped by. Also, they never lay on the landing, just usually the second part of the stairs. So I wonder if the cat hissed something off by sitting on the landing. Should be noted, I haven't paid much attention or shown any fear with entities that have been here since the laughing incident. Feel if something is here, it's coming and going. Perhaps some kind of portal near my house or on it. Haven't seen anything. Haven't felt too much of a presence. But who knows? Probably blocking things to protect my mind. My daughter occasionally talks about the scary monster, but it can be anything for her. Sometimes it's a bug. Sometimes it's something outside, or when it's dark. So to pinpoint anything has been hard since she's a toddler. Sorry for the long post. So, I would like to get rid of a few things about the old house, my grandfather. Prehistory. The house was built about 200 years ago. As far as I know, there was often soldiers in World War II, and a few were often given shelter. One disappeared after a few days without a trace. It was also an old restaurant. About 40 years later, my grandpa found an old cross in the garage and decided to restore it. After a few weeks, strange things started happening. Mary and Jesus pictures started to sway without wind or any human influence. The whole house was shaking without wind that day or similar. And in Bavaria, there are also no earthquakes, loud noises in the basement. My grandfather then mounted the cross on a nearby tree. Since then, it has always been foggy around the tree. My grandmother had cancer and died of it. She had a phone in her room, which was only connected to the phone in the living room if she needed help. She could not call anyone else with it. A few days later, after she died, rang in the living room with the number of my grandmother's phone. When you answered the phone, you heard only breathing, and then it hung up. First, there was no longer a connection to the phone downstairs, and secondarily, the contract of the phone was terminated. My grandpa then died December 2015. Now it's 2023. I myself have already experienced many things. Story number 1. Me and a buddy went at 23 o'clock at night to the house to get something. When we got to the kitchen, to get into the kitchen, you have to go from the hallway left through a door. We then closed the door behind us. Suddenly, someone knocked. We panicked, but still decided to open the door. But there was no one there. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. We ran quickly back to the kitchen. A few minutes, we heard footsteps in front of the door. We then looked outside, but again there was no one to see. We then heard someone from the hallway ran towards us, but there was no one to see either. We ran directly at home. Story number 2. I and a colleague have met in the evening, and we were chilling in the living room. The living room is directly connected to the kitchen. After a few minutes, we heard above us a loud bang and loud footsteps. My friend panicked and waited outside, and I went upstairs alone and have looked, but there was no one to find. Story number 3. Once, a friend and me decided to set up 2 cameras in the hallway. Into the hallway, there goes a door straight into the hall, and on the right, a stair to the bedroom and attic. And my buddy pointed his camera towards the stairs to the beginning of the hallway. I pointed the camera from the beginning of the hallway towards the end. Then we went to get both phones, but both phones were on the floor with the camera pointing towards the ceiling. Both videos were cut off at the exact same time, and both fell to the floor at the exact same time. Story number 4. Me and a friend went to the house at night. We wanted to film on the 2nd floor. At the top of the stair, there were 3 doors. One at the front, and one at the left, and one to the right. We went to the right floor. At the door, there is a chair to block the door. So we got into the hallway where the end right and left are open doors. Then went in and have not discovered anything suspicious. When we looked at the recordings afterwards, you saw in the left door a hand and a face. It was clear to see. But we checked the rooms and there was no one there. Sadly, I don't find the recordings anymore. Story number 5. When my cousin and I were kids, we slept at my grandpa's house. We then went to the toilet at night when we suddenly heard very loud scratching on the door. We then thought we were pranking each other. Then it happened again at the same time. We were talking. My mother has lived about 2 months after the separation with my father in the house, because it's her parents' house. She said after a few weeks she felt very uncomfortable, not welcome, and always watched. She had many sleep paralysis and also heard footsteps, loud noises, etc., and then quickly moved out again. Things happened again and again. Lights go on and off. Doors open on its own. Things lie on the floor, footsteps, voices, things are moving. And most of the time, people are feeling very uncomfortable. At each visit, strange things happen. We'll spend the days in the house alone and will take my camera and try to film something. I will post it here if some of you are interested. I hope y'all can help us to figure out what's going on. And please let me know if someone has experienced similar things. To start off, I live in an old house that was built around 1940s, but it's been renovated many times in the past 18 years. There was an older woman who lived here before us, but I'm not exactly sure if she died here. If she did, then it might explain some things. First time I experienced something odd was when I was around 7 to 9 years old. Maybe it was Christmas and I was lying on the floor in our living room with my family. I looked up and saw a figure staring into the room through the window. Our front door leads to our living room, and we have a light just outside the front door. The light was turned on, and I could see the figure looking in with a smile. It also had dark eyes. I was really scared and kept staring back at it, but none of my family members saw it. This happened maybe a couple years back, but when I'm home alone with my sister, We were in the living room again and heard footsteps coming from the stairs that sounded exactly like our dad's steps. But there wasn't anyone else in the house. It was probably 3 or 4 steps we heard. My sister has told me she has heard steps coming from the upstairs before. My newest experience happened a few weeks back, but when I was upstairs in my bedroom playing my sister's piano with the door open. We have vinyl flooring in the upstairs rooms, which basically makes the floor kind of slippery and hard, if that makes sense. You can hear when something moves against it easily due to how hard the flooring is. So, when I was playing, I started to hear the noises as if someone was scratching the floor. We didn't have windows open at the time, and we don't have mice in our house during summers. I shook it off. I kept hearing it and eventually got too creeped out to keep playing and went downstairs. I was home alone at the time, and the noise came from the next room for sure. This is quite recent and maybe ongoing. I'll update if more happens. I've always been able to see, hear, feel ghost spirits since I was a kid. My ability isn't quite strong, so it doesn't happen all the time. But I've for the most part gotten used to it, and I've had contacts and actually made me laugh too. With that said, I think there may be something following me. I'm not totally sure yet. The first incident happened earlier this week. I was in bed laying down and browsing Facebook when I heard a dog whining sound literally right next to my face. We have 3 dogs, 2 smaller and 1 medium size. Smaller dogs usually sleep in my bed with me, while the mid-size sleeps in my husband's room. The thing is, all 3 dogs were not in the room with me at the time. My mid-sized dog was in my hubby's room, while smaller dogs were hanging out with the hubby in the living room. I set up to double check, and sure enough, no dog in my bedroom. I called out to tell them, and one of them ran down the hallway into the room. And a few seconds later, the other one came too. I didn't think more and told them to go to sleep, so they did. Last night, as I was leaving my sister's house, I did what I always do. I turned on the porch light, opened the door, and looked down to get the key out of my purse. As I was doing that, I felt a presence and at the same time hissing sound right in front of me. It literally made me stumble back in shock. Naturally, there was nothing. It spooked me enough that I actually put the key in the lock, closed the door, locked it, and left, all without turning off the porch light. I haven't been spooked like this in quite a while now. Last time was last year at an old office building, which I actually didn't mind most of the time, since most of the time they were quite juvenile. This time, I didn't feel malicious either, but both incidents were loud enough to catch my attention. I'll update if more happens, and if it progresses, I'll do something about it. So I have chronic pain. 2 years ago, I started doing ketamine therapy to get off opioids. I'll admit I've done it on the side as well. I have made 2 visits to Tombstone, Arizona, and both times I did a ghost tour. The first time I woke up 3 in the morning after the tour and had a strong feeling something was in the corner, but I refused to look. We left the next day, came back a year later, and stayed in the same room for a few days longer. Woke up every night just around 3 a.m., wanting to look in the corner, but too afraid to. I was in the shower thinking about the thing in the corner, and the voice inside my head said, "His name is Carl," loud and clear. I found out later our room and the one next to it were known to be haunted. Came home to Austin and took a local ghost tour. I saw a man fall from a building balcony, and then the tour guide told us about the man who died falling from that very balcony. I've seen things at friends' houses and felt weird sensations out in public. I've always been a bit sensitive and have had other experiences before the ketamine therapy, but these new experiences seem more real, more intense. Did I open a door somehow? I'll start out by saying that I am not a big ghost believer, or maybe even a demon believer. After what happened last night, I've learned that I was very, very wrong. To give some background, last night, it was my birthday. My girlfriend and I went to her apartment after some drinks. She had another roommate who was not there at the time. When we got there, everything was fine, like normal. We eventually fell asleep. Recently, I've been having horrible nightmares, probably because I'm on a little black tea break from weed right now. Anyway, this dream I had my girlfriend. She is in it, but she is not herself. She was rude, judgmental. We were also homeless. At a point in the dream, she grabs my hand almost as if she broke the fourth wall and says, "We are not alone, get out." I woke up very distraught. The first thing I noticed is the sound of her roommate closing her door. My girlfriend was already awake. It was 4:30 a.m. I asked her to check her roommate's location, and they are close friends, and she has access to her roommates. Her roommate actually turned out to be there, and we brushed off as her just getting to work. So we were laying there in silence. It's when I start to notice things are a bit odd. Everything was dead silent. The room itself somehow felt and looked different. The shadows, the lights of the room were strange. Granted, I'd never been up at 4:30 a.m. It was just different. And this is when I started to freak out. Every alarm bell in my mind was going off telling me to go outside to get out. The room felt like it was closing in. To try and calm myself down, I asked my girlfriend if she's okay, and she says no. And she says something feels very wrong. I feel like I'm being watched. The statement alone put fear in me I've never felt. I told her I felt the same way. I get out of bed trying to rationalize what's happening. I'm thinking maybe it was just a nightmare, and maybe she's freaking out a bit and we're playing into a narrative because we have some anxiety. My mom was not letting me buy it. My mind is saying, no, this is different. You need to leave right now. I go into the living room, and the first thing I notice is that it's very hot. Very hot. And that's not a shock. We live in a state where it's just very, very hot about this time. I felt like somebody left the oven on, like heat was generating in the room. Standing in the living room, it felt like I was being watched by someone or something much bigger and evil than me. I rushed back to her room and asked if she could stay at her mom's tonight. And my girlfriend was more than happy to. And she was on the verge of crying, and she told me she wants to leave right now. We get dressed, grab her cat, and get in the car and drive like hell. And drive like hell was behind us. On the day, we discussed what happened and come to the conclusion that something was definitely very wrong, and it wasn't just one of us who felt like we were in danger. I'm trying to rationalize what we felt last night. We were waiting on the word from the roommate to see if she felt anything. Listen and advice would be appreciated, spiritual or scientific. I want to know what we went through. Did somehow my dream warn me, or did we just freak ourselves out? Whatever I felt last night, though, it felt like it was bigger than any of us. Yesterday was like any other day for me. Waking up, brushing my teeth, all of that normal everyday stuff. But when it came to night, everything changed. Now, some important information to help give some perspective. I was at my grand's house in the spare room. I often heard strange noises in there before, but always managed to find some reasonable explanation for them. But last night was different. While I was setting everything up for bed, I heard a loud noise from outside, sort of like a wolf or howl, and human started screaming at the nighttime. But the noise quickly stopped. You might think, oh, well, it was a wild animal in distress. But my gran lives in a town where the closest woods or fields are like 10 minutes drive away. Makes me extra nervy at night. Here's the thing I can't understand. It was around 1 a.m. I was all comfy, about to go to sleep, when I heard something that would make my heart stop. Somewhere or something whispered my name, and a voice like my grandma and my sister combined. As soon as I heard that, my blood ran cold. I lay perfectly still, my eyes wide open, trying to figure out what it was. It sounded like it came from behind my head. And what's worse is that my bed doesn't face the door. The door is behind my head. So if something was there, I wouldn't see it. I tried to think of a rational explanation, saying I would have heard the bedroom door open. Maybe it was a pillow making a noise, and I was tired, so I probably just hearing things. Okay, I had calmed myself down and eventually worked up the courage to sit up and look around the room. It's very small. So I know if anything was in there, I would see it. It was nothing. Must have been my imagination, right? 5 minutes later, I heard the same cold, eerie voice, the same whisper too, saying the exact same thing. Eleanor. I froze again. And a couple seconds later, the same whispering voice. This time I could quite hear what it said. I know it involved my name again, and I'm pretty sure it also said the word ignore at some point, but as I say, I'm not 100% sure on what it exactly said. This really freaked me out. I stayed still until I worked up the courage to look, but again, there was nothing. But just as I was lying back down, I saw something white dart past. I kept hearing tapping noises on the floor. I stayed still, lying down, trying to go to sleep. But outside the window, I saw something looking in at me through a gap in the blinds. Its eyes were pitch black, and the rest of its face was grayish white. Can't remember what time I went to sleep. I spent most of the night watching this thing. And this morning I checked the blinds, and there's nothing there that could remotely look like an eye, and nothing outside either. I stay at my grandma's a lot, and I never seen or heard anything like that. I'm going to be staying with my gran for a few more nights. If anything else happens, I'll update this. If anyone has any idea what this could be, please let me know. Update: there's a dog that's been barking continuously for at least 10 minutes. I think something's going to happen again tonight. Dogs can sense things, and I've listened very closely. There's nobody else outside, and that could be causing the dog to bark. That much. If anything happens, I'll update straight away. The printer in my room has started making random noises, but as soon as it turned my phone flashlight on, it stops. The room was pitch black before. I think I can hear something out of the window, but I'm going to wait a little longer until I can tell what it is. It sounds like really loud breathing. I don't know if I should look out the window or not. The dog is still barking, so there's some eerie atmosphere right now. I really hope that this thing doesn't come back.
inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross